Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Set to go down on October 18th as part of an MVP show, Shurita Metcalf versus Crystal Rosado, scheduled for 8 rounds in the women's bantamweight division. What will be Shurita Metcalf's first fight since her knockout loss to newly crowned undisputed champion Shanika Johnson, and what is a big step up for young Crystal Rosado. 17 years younger than Shurita. Shurita's 40 years old, the Crystal, who's 23. So Crystal Rosado may have the edge in youth, but Shurita has the edge in experience, height, and length. She stands in at a very generous 5'7.5" to Crystal, who stands at a very modest 5'3". Shurita Metcalf sports a professional record of 14 wins with 5 losses and 1 draw, 2 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 20 professional bouts. The young Crystal, who sports an unblemished record of 7 wins with no losses and no draws, 2 knockouts. Sort of a sink-or-swim fight for the former champion and Crystal for different reasons. If Crystal is to go on to become a world champion, unified, undisputed, or otherwise, she needs to prove that she can handle this assignment. She needs to prove that she can beat Shurita Metcalf. And for Shurita, who's coming off a lopsided loss to Shanika Johnson, if she is to prove that Father Time hasn't caught up to her and she still has more left to give the sport of boxing, she needs to prove that she can beat Crystal. Crystal Rosado, who was last in action in July of this year and again in March before that. This will be Crystal's 3rd fight of this year. In that way, MVP is doing a great job of keeping her busy. The victory for Crystal, who is noticeably smaller in stature, all depends on her ability to cut the ring off and keep the pressure on. She needs to be aggressive in this fight, and she needs to be persistent, whereas Shurita, it's the opposite. With Shurita, she's got to keep distance, beat those feet, move around, and walk Crystal into punches. Can she do it on what are those 40-year-old legs? I'm not convinced that she can. Not after that lopsided loss to Shanika Johnson. I think Crystal's too young, too fresh, and too fast, and she will be able to get to Shurita Metcalf, in effect outworking her. I don't think she stops her. I don't think she knocks her out, but I do think she piles up the rounds and wins a points decision. Just on activity, I'm going with Crystal Rosado on points to win the fight, set to go down on the 18th in what is another solid MVP show. And this is how MVP helps to fill the gaps in between the big fights, fill the void, sort of left behind by the PBC and left behind by Top Rank, who has yet to announce their new broadcast partner and the home for their fights. I mean, for God's sake, it's Wednesday, and we still don't know where to watch Inoa's fight with MJ on Sunday. The vacancy has been noticeable all throughout the month of August, and in some ways this month, that Top Rank and PBC are not doing anywhere near as many shows as they used to. Enter MVP, who have a talented young roster of fighters and plenty of fight dates to go around, which in effect helps to fill the void. Looking forward to it. I've already taken in 1 or 2 MVP prospect shows, and these are fun shows. Whoever their matchmaker is, he knows how to put together a fight, a crowd-pleasing fight. I'm looking forward to this one. Keep your eyes peeled for Rosado versus Metcalf in October.
The Norman and Haney fight. It seems to me that a lot of boxers are really favoring Haney in his skill set, kind of like saying that Brian Norman's IQ and Haney's is not necessarily on the same level. When you look at those levels of IQ between the two, do you feel like it's a big separation gap?
Everybody keep talking about Haney's IQ, but he couldn't get out the way of the left hook. He couldn't adjust to get out the way of Ryan's left hook. He couldn't even get down to make it a boring fight and just win like he did against Jose Ramirez. So how high is his IQ for real?
Right. That is true. And he didn't take no chances in that fight as well with the Ramirez fight.
Okay. So how big is his IQ? Everybody's based off Haney. Like I'm saying, if you love Devin Haney, you like Devin Haney because he got fancy clothes. He got fancy jewelry. He got nice clothes. That's it. Nothing about Devin Haney sticks out. He didn't really beat Lomachenko. His best fight was against Regis Prograis. You know Regis Prograis is washed. He looked trash again. He couldn't adjust against Ryan Garcia. Come on now. He beat Kambosos for the title. Come on, bro. He did not beat Lomachenko. They gave him the fight, but again, he was a lot bigger than Lomachenko. Younger, way younger than Lomachenko. He did not hit Lomachenko. When you see them, man, Lomachenko was doing all kind of shit to that boy when they slow it down. Some of the shit you can't see Lomachenko. Like I say, I was kind of critical of him at first too. Like Lomachenko, he good, but I don't think he that good the way they saying. But the way he was pushing his head down, hit him around with the side, turned him, man, shit that you can't see in real time like that. Man, come on. Like I say, so Devin Haney, you know, he was a champion. He was a champion. That's what you can say. You can't take none of him. You know, it's not easy to be a champion. And he was in the fight with Lomachenko. He just didn't win the fight. And Regis Prograis was a good fighter. He just shut him down. Way too big, looked way too big. And then you got to think too, though, how bad he looked. You never think about how Prograis looked against Zerillo. We don't know who Zerillo was. A guy that come out of nowhere, probably from Venezuela too. You know, and I thought he lost the fight. Prograis lost.
Puerto Rican.
Okay, I thought he lost that fight, but you know, of course, this is his hometown, first fight, world title fight in his hometown. They gave it to Regis Prograis. Next fight, he got destroyed by Devin Haney. So, I mean, what are we talking about?
May seem like Bernie the Boxer is being unnecessarily harsh on Devin Haney, but those were valid points he raised, many of which I've raised myself here on the channel. Getting the decision over Vasyl Lomachenko, a decision I don't think Devin deserved, set a course of events in motion that led to the Ryan Garcia fight. That boxing as a sport would likely have been better off if Devin hadn't have won that fight, if he would have lost.
Why?
Because if he would have lost and Vasyl Lomachenko would have become undisputed champion, he wouldn't have been as disheartened, dejected after the fight. Losing that fight is what made Vasyl Lomachenko start contemplating retirement. So if he would have won, that probably wouldn't have been on his mind, and he would have gone on to then fight Shakur Stevenson. If he would have won that fight and Devin would have lost, if Devin would have lost, he would have been forced to go back to the drawing board, tighten up, and get better, so that he doesn't get caught with his pants down in a Ryan Garcia fight. I remember immediately after that fight I said that in some ways it was karma that he lost to Ryan Garcia, or got beat up by him, however you want to put it, because you got a victory that you shouldn't have got, and Ryan ended up getting a victory over you that he shouldn't have got. Karma always comes back around. Getting a decision that he didn't deserve put forth a sequence of events in motion that led to him losing to Ryan. Even if it's been stricken from the record and reversed on paper, the effects of that fight, we're still seeing them. We saw him in the Jose Ramirez fight. That wasn't IQ we saw. That was a guy who's fighting scared. So when people start talking about how he's got a better IQ than Brian Norman, that really has yet to be determined, because so far it seems like a lot of Devin Haney's success has been contingent upon his height advantage,
Yes.
his reach advantage, that the night of a fight he rehydrates pretty heavy.
Yes.
Some have gone as far as calling Devin a weight bully, but you get the gist of it. That Devin Haney's size may have had a lot to do with his success so far, but he doesn't have size over Brian Norman, does he? Can't say that he's the naturally bigger guy. He's still relatively new to the welterweight division, and you say that, well, if this fight is so risky, why would Devin be taking it on? He doesn't have much of a choice. 2 fights already fell through. The Ryan Garcia rematch, and what was supposed to be a Lopez fight after that. If he didn't take on the Brian Norman fight, how else was he supposed to make a multi-million-dollar purse? He's not attached to anybody. He is a network and promotional free agent, meaning nobody has to make a fight for him. What about his promotional company? What about DHP? Just point me in the direction of the next DHP show. Where is the DHP stable of fighters? With what major broadcaster does DHP have a broadcast deal with? Nobody. Because Devin Haney is as much a promoter as I am an astronaut. The point being, if he hadn't have accepted the Brian Norman fight offered to him by Turki El Sheikh, he likely would not have fought again this year. That was his only out to make another multi-million-dollar purse. Not being attached to anybody, nobody's attached to you. So you don't have an Eddie Hearn to make you those stay busy fights, those in-between fights for, I don't know, $2-3 million at a time. You don't have that because you didn't make a commitment to them, so they don't have to make a commitment to you. Nobody does. You tell yourself, well, I can always fight on Turkey's shows, and you can, but Turkey ain't in the business of paying for layups. Tune-up fights, and so, here we are. That if you're asking yourself, why did he take on the Brian Norman fight, it's not like he had much of a choice. I think that Brian Norman is very much live in that fight. The bookies may have him the betting underdog. At least I think they do. But he's very much live in that fight, and I don't think he has to get in with too many clean punches to hurt Devin Haney, who's shown a fragile chin at 135 and 140. I don't imagine it's much better at 147. We'll see what happens. Elsewhere in the world of boxing ahead of this weekend's mega match, earlier this week there was a rumor going around that Terence Crawford had suffered a shoulder injury in preparation for Canelo, a rumor that was started, seemingly, by a Twitter user that goes by the name Pound for Pound. Pound for Pound said, damn, I'm hearing from a close source that Terence Crawford's shoulder that he had surgery on has been flaring up in camp. When did Terence Crawford ever have shoulder surgery? Apparently it has been a lingering issue for the past 8 to 10 weeks and is being monitored closely. That is seemingly where this rumor came from, where it started, to which Terence Crawford himself responded.
Where I got a shoulder, I think people coming up with their own, antics. Terence Crawford got a shoulder injury, Terence Crawford on the shade, Terence Crawford slow, Terence Crawford. Yeah, they coming up with all kinds of stuff.
So Terence Crawford vehemently denies that there are any issues with his shoulder, to which Pound for Pound responded, LOL, y'all be too busy trying to discredit me, but after the fight, when this story comes out and everyone is talking about it, just give me my damn credit. Y'all be trying to discredit me? Terence Crawford himself just discredited you. What the hell are you talking about? What's wrong with you? That's not the first time something this Pound for Pound character said got proven to be bullshit. This is the same guy who earlier this year swore up and down on a stack of Bibles that Boots was gonna leave Matchroom and he was in talks to go to the PBC. I remember we had a whole discussion about it, a whole argument, I should say. I said it then. There's absolutely no reason to believe that Boots would leave Matchroom for the PBC, who neither have the money that he's used to getting paid or the fight dates to keep him active. Why would he go over there? And once again, this Pound for Pound character deferred to his quote-unquote sources. Let me tell you something. What? This person, whoever it is, has no sources. They're not a journalist. They don't know anybody on the inside. What they do have is a monetized Twitter account. And much like the clickbait you see in the YouTube boxing sphere, you see on Twitter. From every bozo with a blue tick next to their name looking to make a few bucks off of Twitter traffic. Now, I would say that this person should have more self-respect and more dignity to be making up stories on Twitter. But you notice that accounts like this one, they never attach a face to what is being said. Someone that can be held accountable. These accounts get by making sensationalistic claims from pseudo-journalists and their pseudo-sources so that they can make their money very quickly off the traffic, and by the time everybody realizes they're full of shit, they already made their money. And so the best way to deal with an account like this one is not to. Don't believe them, just ignore them. Whatever they say is already tainted because they're the one that said it. They're low-quality people. These people have no standing and no stature within the boxing space, and whoever raised you, they didn't raise you right. Making up stories like you're a 12-year-old. Grow up. Another one of these Gen Alpha losers.
Are you aware, I assume you are, but let me ask, of the old adage in boxing, the great big man beats the good big man beats the good little man?
But that's what they say, but it's not always the case. When you look at all the great little mans that moved up in weight, they beat the great big man. A lot of people, they running with that narrative. Who came up with that?
Well, they just noticed through the years, man, for 100 years, you're right, there have been examples.
I'm saying, who came up with that?
I don't know if there was a...
See, don't nobody know.
I can't name the person.
Don't nobody know who came up with that, and everybody just running with it because they don't know what they talking about. When we look at the history of boxing, more little men moved up in weight to be the bigger man than boxing. More little man, when you talk about Floyd Mayweather, and when you talk about De La
I see what
Hoya,
you're
when
saying,
you talk about Pacquiao, when you talk about Sugar Ray Leonard, when you talk about Roberto Duran, when you talk about Canelo Alvarez, when you talk about Terrence Crawford, when you talk about Shakur Stevenson, I can name fighters for days that was smaller, that moved up in weight consistently and was successful.
I don't think Max did a good enough job of characterizing that old proverb, and thus I don't think Terrence really understood it, because the examples he gave don't qualify. It's not simply that a smaller fighter can move up and have success. That's saying that when a smaller Vasily Lomachenko moves up and fights a Rocky Martinez, well, Rocky Martinez was not the equally good big man, and neither was Jorge Linares, and thus Loma was able to win. But if he were facing a fighter, a bigger fighter, who's just as good as he is,
But bigger.
maybe Loma doesn't win. Though oftentimes what we see in these situations is that there isn't an equally good big man. When Inoue moves up to 118, there was not an equally good 118-pounder there to meet him. The same applies to 122.
There was not an equally good big man there.
The same applies to Usyk in the heavyweight division. When he moves up there, there's not an equally good big man who's as good as he is with his footwork and his ring savvy, his ring IQ to meet him, and thus he was able to be successful. This is one of the rare instances where the big man might actually be better than the smaller fighter moving up.
Canelo and Crawford.
Because Canelo is just as accomplished as Terrence Crawford. No, Canelo hasn't been undisputed champion at multiple weights, but he has been undisputed multiple times. And resume for resume, name for name, Canelo's resume is deeper than Terrence's. So this is a rare situation where the big man might not just be as good as the little man, he might be better. I'm sure many of you would have heard that saying a lot by now, if you watch a lot of boxing, that the good big man beats the equally good little man. It's just that a lot of the time, that's not what we're seeing. This is one of the rare instances where we might see that, because they're both four-weight world champions. They've both got good resumes, though Canelo's is better, it's deeper.
Terrence might have looked more dominant with the guys that he's fought so far, but the guys that he's fought so far don't really stack up with Canelo's opponents. I mean, Miguel Cotto by himself is a better name than any name on Terrence's resume.
I don't begrudge Terrence his confidence. I want him to be confident. I want him to believe he can win so that we get a real fight and not a cash grab. But I am sorry to say that for the first time ever, I'm not betting on Terrence Crawford to win this one. I think he's taking on too much under less than ideal circumstances. And I have Canelo winning this weekend.